Alright, so this video is going to be on designing with introspection. So it's another tutorial starting fresh, and you do it on an iPad, iPhone, doesn't really matter, I'll do it on an iPhone. The concept of this tutorial is working with the concept of dynamic binding. So an Objective-C allows you to create binding when you're running the program. And so a feature is possible to postpone the decision about what classes we're going to be dealing with until runtime. So we're going to make this possible, or make this kind of decision. You need to be able to determine exactly what classes we're dealing with. So we can tell components by what they are and ask the component what it is. So we'll sort of see how this works together in a few minutes here. But we want to open up a new single view application, start Xcode. And don't worry about this automatic reference counting, it's no longer a feature anymore. So go ahead and open up Xcode, create a new project. Single view application, click on next, and this one's going to be called the introspec. Let's just call it introspection there. Oh, it doesn't really matter what you call it. I'm going to leave mine on an iPhone. It just makes fewer files versus doing the universal. And I'm going to go ahead and save it to the desktop. So, all right. Yes? Question ready?
Yes. So after the file open new project, which one we have to select? Single plus which?
Yes? Do you want me to do it one more time? Here, I'll do it slower.
Yeah.
Did you just get a MacBook? Because we've been doing this, well, this is good. We're reviewing a little bit this morning. Did you get this far?
Yes.
Okay, very good. I will go a little bit slower. I realize some people are finally on board. So they spent the first weekend without any equipment, and so now they're finally on board. So they're like, wait a minute, what did you just do? So they haven't done it a dozen times already. All right, everybody else has done it a couple of times already, so we're just zipping through it. Okay, so create a new project. Now we're going to create the interface. So we're going to drag a view component from the library, and we're going to put a view component onto the canvas, and we're going to put 8 labels into the view. So what I'm going to do is show you how to treat objects generically. So we're going to put a bunch of stuff on there, then hide and show objects and do things by looking at what the object is and telling all of the buttons to be colored a certain way, or all of the views to be a certain way. So we need a separate little view for this. And then we're going to put 8 labels in the view. And should have a large white screen with the view objects containing the 8 labels. All of the other components are going to be on the main window. So let's take a look here. The interface is going to look like this. Well, this is an old screenshot, but this is the view. So we'll put a label on the top. So let's do the view first. So go ahead and click on your storyboard. And here's my storyboard. And I'm going to change my background color actually, and then that way I can tell the view on top of the view. So I'm going to change the background color to green. And I'm going to type in view down here. And what I want, let's just take a look here. Image view, text view, web view, scroll view, picker view, view. Let's just take a view. A view is going to be a generic view. What's it going to be? It's a subset. So if I put the view here, you see it automatically like tries to resize itself. So we have a view inside of a view. So I'm going to make it not fit the entire dimensions of the screen. In fact, I'm just going to put it right in the middle like that. And then I'm going to change the background of that view to, let's make it white. I think it is white already. So that's how I got a view inside of a view. This is a window, by the way, and we have a view. This is the background view, and if you click on the little thing on the side here, you'll see I have a view now. This is the view. This is my green view. This is why I changed the color of it, by the way, so I could tell the difference between them. If you have a white view inside of a white view, you can't see the view. So change the background color and you'll be able to see it. Out here I have the top guide. I have the top guide on the top. I have the bottom guide on the bottom. I have a view, and then I have a view inside of the view. Go ahead and drag. Yes? This here was down here on the bottom. There's a little button on the left-hand side of the window that opens up a side panel that gives you the component view. or the view controller scene is what they call it. Now they used to call it a component view, so you could see the components inside of the view. So, Now, let me show you something else you can do as well with this component view. So I'm going to put labels on there. So I'm going to go ahead and type in label here. If I put a label out here, I can actually stick it inside of the view by dragging it this way. So let me show you what I did with that. I'm going to stick the label out here. So my label's right here on my outer view. I can use this to put it inside of the inner view. So this little thing comes in handy, the little controller comes in handy for nesting components, because sometimes you may not be able to drag it correctly, or you may not, you might not see it. But go ahead and put 8 of these suckers in here. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And another thing you can do is cut and paste it if you wanted to as well. I'm making them a little bigger because I'm going to be changing the foreground and the background color of the views. But let's say, for example, I wanted to take like a shorter method to this. I can just drag this one and go and edit copy as an example, and then paste it in again. And there it is. And so I want 4 more. I could just paste 2, 3, 4. Now I have 4 more labels in there. So let's see, I'm going to move them around so that they look good. So. All right, did we get this far? Hopefully some of us have. If not, keep putting your labels in there. I don't know how many I was supposed to put in there, but it doesn't really matter actually. I'm sorry? Oh, I thought somebody asked a question. Oh yeah, we did have 8 in here. So we want to put 4 buttons in here too. So let me go ahead here and take a look. So open up the ViewController.8, make the following changes. We're going to put some actions in for button test 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I probably missed it. It was probably way up here in the instructions, but go ahead and add 4 buttons to this as well. So your view looks like this. You have a view, and then you want to put the buttons on the outside, and then we'll put a label out here. So let's take a look here. So I have the label open, so I'll put a label out here, and I'm going to call this my fabulous application. There we go. It doesn't really matter what you call this. Actually, it doesn't really matter what label you put on anything. There we go. Looks pretty good. Okay. I'm going to make this be a little bit smaller. There we go. So go ahead and put 4 buttons. Tests 1 through 4. And put them on the outer view. So we have a 1, 2, 3, 4. So I can see I have a label out here. I've got my 4 buttons. I'm going to call this test 1. And then we have test 2. Test 3. And we'll call this one test 4. All right, now take a look at my cheat sheet over here. Something very similar. This is very old screenshots. This interface looks slightly different, but the concept's still the same. So hopefully we've gotten this far. If not, go ahead and continue. All right, so we're going to make sure we have the actions set for button number 1 through button number 4. So go ahead and open up the ViewController.h file. So I'm going to close the side panel, move this guy over. I'm going to kind of get rid of, I don't need that controller over there anymore either. And I'm going to open up the little tuxedo icon. And in my little tuxedo icon, I'm going to make sure that I'm on the ViewController.h file. So this is what I was saying before. By default, it comes up with a .m now. It used to come up with a .h by default. It's kind of irritating, actually. So let's see. We know how to do this already, so let's go ahead and wire the 4 buttons. So go ahead and right mouse click on the button. After you do this a dozen more times, you'll be doing it before I even start this step. So I'm going to do the touchdown event. It doesn't really matter which one you do. I'm going to call this test 1, and I'm going to leave the ID. I'm going to put the ID on UI button. It doesn't really matter that you put it on. And then I'm going to do this one as test 2. Test 2. And then we have a test 3. And then last but not least, test number 4. Test 4. Okay. So now I have my buttons wired, and I'm going to change this stuff with the button clicks. So on the test, I'm going to basically use the properties of everything else on the page to move things around. So let's take a look then at the next step. So we're only declaring action methods for the 4 buttons. We're not going to declare anything else. So you don't need IB outlets for anything actually. So we're going to find controls in the view by inspecting the properties of the objects inside of the main view using an introspection, which is the purpose of this tutorial. So on the test 1, and what we're going to do is this is a for loop. For the UI view, all items in the view, basically, a view in self view, subviews. If the A view is a member of the class UI label, if it's a label, then we're going to set the background to red color. So if I cut and paste, or I can just stick this code inside of test 1. Let me go through all of them, and then we can just populate the test 1 through test 4. So if it's this is the trick here, is member of class, UI label class. So for everything in the view, looking at the UI view, if it's a label, because we're not going to do any properties or synthesize on any of these labels, we're just going to find the labels. And then we're going to set the background color to red. And then the second test is going to be if it is a UI view class. So if a view is kind of class UI view class, so this was UI label, this is UI view. So what we're doing is, this is the introspection part, by the way. We're testing the objects for all of the objects in the view. We're going to test the objects to see what are they. Are they a view? Are they a label? Are they a button? And then if they're a UI view, then set the background color to blue. So that's for our view that we put out there. That's why we put a view out there. And then for the view is the subview. If can perform the action on the set the text. So if there is an action that can be performed called set text, we can do that on a label, we can do that on a button. We can set the text. If that actually comes out true with sender, which means this action can be performed, doesn't come back with an error, then we know we can change the text. So set the text to hello. So we'll put hello on all of the buttons, and all of the buttons actually. You can put hello on everything that you can actually perform a set text to. And then test number 4 is going to be for the UI view and the subviews. Inside of the subviews, if it's a member of the view class, go inside of the separate view that we have. And then for all of the labels inside of the subview, set the background color to green. So what we're going to do is find the items by what they are in terms of is member of class. And then also this, if you can perform the action, then do the action. So if this doesn't come back true, this comes back false, it's not going to set the text to hello, obviously. So let's see. I'm going to go ahead and, you know what? I'm going to copy these in this way because I didn't call it test 1 pressed. I called it test 1, test 2, test 3. So I'm going to go ahead and copy them in. It just takes a second. And then you guys can catch up if you're halfway in between doing something else. So switch over to the ViewController.m file. And if you want to, you can actually just move them around. Actually, you don't necessarily have to do them in the order that I did them in here. But this one's going to be for the label. So test number 1 is going to do the label. So if I wanted to, I could actually change the label here to do a UI label test. I'm going to put here UI label. Label red color. Here, I'll do this with it too. I don't know. So this is going to change the label red color. And then let's see. I'll change the tutorial around a little bit. This one's going to be the blue color on the view. Change the view to blue. And so this is number 2. And UI color blue on the view is kind of, so this is a view to blue. There we go. And then number 3 will be, let's see, hello. Change the text to hello. Hello. So go ahead and cut and paste and put the code into the different areas. So you don't necessarily have to change the button labels. So number 3 is going to be changing text. So say change text to hello. Hello. There we go. And last but not least, number 4, we have, let's see, number 4. Number 4 is going to be the green color for the background of the labels. Label backgrounds. I don't know if I went over number 4 originally either, but let's see. I believe we might have to fix the formatting of this one too, but let's just take a look. So number 4, let's take a look here. Yeah. All right, so get rid of that one. Let's see what else we got going on here. So let's see. Maybe we need to stick another one in here. So let's see. For loop, opening, closing, if, for. There we go. If you put in all of the closing, properly nested closing brackets here. Let's see. There we go. So now if you run it, you should get, wait, I didn't label this one here. So I'm going to call this one green color label. UI color is going to be setting label background color. So label background to green. All right. So go ahead and run her and see what happens. Actually, this might be an interesting experiment to see if this actually works. Should. All right, so here's the fabulous application. So we should set the label red. So this was the one up here on the outer view. So remember, we only put one label on the outside. We put 8 labels on the inside. So this one here set the label color to red. So this one's going to set the view to blue. Now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 views. So remembering the concept that we're all having view components, they're all of the hierarchy of of view, which is kind of the interesting behavior that we've just observed here. Everything's a view, except for the container that's holding the views, which is kind of an interesting concept. So all of our views got set to blue. But if we do here, change the text to hello, now I have hello out here. So the text of the label that's on the outer view got set to hello.
My fabulous application was a label that was not inside the view, right?
Correct, it's on the outer view, because we didn't go into the subview. If we go into the subview, that's this one here, that's the label background, that's the last one. Setting the label backgrounds in the subview. So we have two hierarchies. We have the outer view and we have the inner view. If we go into the inner view, if you take a look at number 4 here, setting the background to green, you'll see the inner view component. So that one is this one down here, where you're setting a view, and then if it's a member of the UI view inside of the view, then take a look at the labels. So you can actually kind of sort of see it here. If you look at number 2, sets the, if it's kind of view class view, then set the background color. Well, everything is a view. All the components out there are views, because they're all inherited from the view object. So that's how they all got blue. But up here, we have the red color that's going to be on the, set the subview. Well, this is supposed to be the subview then. Well, the subview is supposed to have, this is test number 1. Let me run this again. I'm kind of curious now to see if test number 1 works correctly. So let's see. Oops, simulator's in use. Shouldn't be. So test number 1 was setting the red color. So for the UI view is a subview. If the view is a member of a UI label class, let's take a look here then. Label class, but that should have been of the, well, from the outer view. So we didn't go in, we went from the outer view to the inner view to the inner view. There's 3 views because we have an outer. So if we look at our view hierarchy over here, oops, let's take a look. What happened to my view here? My view got missing. There we go. We see we have a view, so we have both views. So it depends on what view we're actually looking at in terms of which level. And so if we nest them, we should get the subview from the views. So long story short, what we're doing on this last one is just taking all of the views. So, or excuse me, the background color is going to be in the inner view. So if it's of a member, if it's a member of UI view class, then for the 4 UI labels in the subview. So, long story short, it's an elaborate way of showing you all of the views and all the properties you can set on the views. So you can take the entire app if you wanted to and switch it over, changing all the colors around if you wanted to by just getting at the class of. So it's in a member of a class, is member of a class, or does it have an action to be performed? And if the action to be performed is set text, and if it works, then you know it's actually going to perform like it should. So, all right, so you can play around with this all afternoon if you want to, so, or not. So you can do a lot of interesting things with this. Most people do it to hide and show. Hide this view, show that view. So what you could do, and this is really bad actually, but in the old days before we had storyboards, you could put and drag, here I'll just do it right now actually. You could put a couple of views on here. View. Okay, I'm messing this up, so don't do this unless you want to mess up your finished app. And then I'm going to put another view out here. So now I have 2 more views that I put out here, and I could make the views actually kind of take up the whole screen if I wanted to. And then depending upon what view, this is the really bad way of creating a multiple viewed application. If I run it right now, you see one view is going to be covering up the other view, covering up the other view. So if I hide and show the different views, see now I see this whole thing looks white. And you're wondering, where are my components? Well, because I have to set the property to hide and then show, hide and show different views. So if I wanted to, I could put a couple buttons up there and click the buttons. You can probably do this on your own and figure out how to do it. You're just taking the view and you're hiding and showing it, setting a property. If I actually come back here, I can see anything that I can set over here on the view. So if I have this view here clicked, and I come over here, I can set the hidden property. So now I've hidden this view. And then if I click on this view here, and oh, this one is hidden, okay. So that one's hidden, and then take this one underneath it. I'm clicking on hidden over here. So now I have them both hidden. So now if I run it, I'll see the fabulous application underneath it. There it is, because I hid those other two. And then I selectively unhide them, set the hidden to false. I wouldn't do that. Instead, I'd create multiple views and put them in a storyboard, actually. Because what you're doing is you're nesting a bunch of views inside of a view controller, when you should have a separate view for a separate view controller, and then you'll have better, a little bit easier kind of format to it, better formatting. All right, questions on this one? Yeah, all right. So this one was called introspection, and let's just take a look here. There's a few concluding comments on here in terms of the view controller. Run in the app, observe the behavior. What are we doing? What are we doing? We're taking and looking at, in terms of the first test, looks at the subviews of the main view. And it then uses an isMemberOf class on each one to determine if it's a view, if it is a UI label, even though it's part of the view class. And then the isMemberOf class returns yes if the object is an instance of a specific class, meaning it's a UI label. And then if we run it, we kind of have this effect. We saw this live actually a few minutes ago. Label objects are inside of the white square UI view, which is the subview we stick on there. And do not get their background color set to red, because only the outer view component got its background color set to red, because we were on that level of the view. And let's see. No direct subviews in the main view. And the second test looked at the subviews that were inside of the main view, that were descendants of UI view, and performed the is kind of class. So we had both. We had the, is it an object of, is it a member of this class, or is it a kind of class in terms of the concept. So, and then we had the background buttons. Actually, the new UI sets the entire background color, not just the label behind it. So. And you could read through the rest of this on your own and kind of get the concept of what we saw at sort of live. So anyway, so introspection is useful when you have a large number of components and they're all similar and you don't want to create properties out of them and you just want to change something about them. Then you can get an entire subgrouping of them and hide and show or change the background color or do something with it. So it's useful when you're using inheritance, because as you've seen before, they're all inherited from view. So you can take everything that's a view component and get rid of it, or anything that's a view component and do something to it as a grouping. So it comes in handy for that. So. All right, so let's see. That one was called introspection. We have another tutorial, moving right along, called the text view. And so let's run through this one because it's kind of a short one actually. And we'll see basically, I don't know if there's a screenshot at the end of this. So there's no screenshot on the end of this, but we'll take a look at terms of another view component. This one goes along with the last one because it deals with the view components actually. And we're going to look at a text view. What we put up there was just an ordinary view. We have hierarchies of these views, and we have different types of views, such as an image view, text view. And then so the view is the highest level, then we have all these different subparts or subclasses of views. So this one's going to take a look at the text view. So we're going to demonstrate also how to use the app delegate in this tutorial, because we haven't used any of the app delegates yet. So this is the first one that deals with that concept as well. Going back to the model view controller, we know about our views, I hope, at this point. And we have the controller, the view controller, that we're wiring to manipulate the view. And then we have the app delegate, which is our data part of it. So the M for the model is the app delegate, and the view and the controller, those are the kind of the more easier ones. So we're going to create a single view application, and let's call this one text view. So go ahead and close that app if it was open and create a new app, and this one's going to be called a single view. We're going to use a single view template, and then we're going to call this one a text view. And I'm going to create mine for the iPhone. You can create it for anything that you want. And I'm going to save mine on the desktop. So we're back where we were in the beginning of the last tutorial. We have our view out here. So now what I'm going to do is take a look here, and we're going to open up the appdelegate.m file. And on the application did finish loading. Let's just take a look at that one because we haven't looked at this one yet. We have appdelegate.h, and then we have appdelegate.m. Normally you're not going to be changing this one. This is actually configuration for the app itself. So what you're going to be changing is what happens when the view did load, if you did unload it, if you finished loading, stuff like that. When the application loads, then you have the data component of it in terms of the app delegate. So if we look at the .h file for app delegate, and this is the first time we've actually opened this one up for this class, we have the UI responder, and then we have a protocol that's being used, UI application delegate. This is the generic protocol that's being used on the app to essentially come up with the functionality of the application. So I have in here a property, and the property is going to be the UI window. This is by default. So this is what actually brings up our view with our window. So this is as generic as it gets. If you had an app that opened up multiple views, you can add them into this, or multiple windows, but you're not going to have that. Usually you just have a single view, which is what we opened up in terms of the project type, which gave us a single window. So that's why we've been using the single view project type. On the .m file, we have application, which is the main method that loads up the UI application. And then we have application will resign active, application did enter background. So the life cycle of the application is controlled by the app delegate in this particular case. So application will enter foreground, application did become active, application will terminate. So just like what we get, you notice there's nothing in these. It's pretty empty because we're not programming anything about the application. So if the application, for example, was a text editor and it opened up a file and the file put some stuff into memory, when the application went away, we could close the file and or clean up the memory or do something. So basically the running of the app is controlled by the app delegate. So it's the traffic cop of the app, if you want to think of it that way. All right. So now we've oriented ourselves to appdelegate.m, and the application did finish loading. Let's take and create a view controller. So we're going to expand the classes. Notice that we have the interface builder, and then create a view controller class and a view controller XIB for the view controller, which is what we have already. And then we're going to add the following method to the app delegate. Well, this is the application did finish loading. Well, what are we going to load? We're going to say that it loaded. In fact, we actually have this one already, so I'm going to take this code, copy it, and put it over there. We're going to change the UI navigation. So if I come back over to the view controller, oh, I don't have a did finish loading. Yes, I do. Did finish launching with options. Let's take a look. Did finish launching. Let's just take this one here, actually. This will be interesting to see what happens with this. This is an old project type, actually. It may or may not necessarily work with this logic. I'm going to stick it on the top, though, so I remember where I stuck it. And take a look at the error that's going to come out here. Expected, well, all right, so it's got a problem here. In terms of, let's just take a look here. Application did finish launching. Application did finish launching with options. Well, I'm actually going to wing it here a little bit. I'm going to take this code out of here, get rid of this guy. Don't necessarily like that one. I'm going to put it in here. And what have I got here? Well, I've got this view controller that doesn't exist yet. So actually, let's get rid of that line here. I may end up having to rewrite this tutorial to match with the current project type. Let's take a look here. We don't have window underscore. Well, we can leave window alone. I just want to check something real quick here, though. All right, so I modified the UI navigation controller. I added a UI. Okay, so what I did is I added a UI navigation controller here because we're going to open up a text view. We're going to stick the text view inside of the window. And so we have under here, init with root ViewController. I took out the underscore next to it so that I could just get our ViewController loaded. We used to have to do that. We don't necessarily have to do that anymore. In fact, this code would load a different navigation controller, which is what we're going to do here. So in our navigation controller, we're going to load one up that loads a text box. So we're going to create a variable for a text view. And after creating it, we're going to declare the variable for the text view, and we're going to write the property for that one. And then we're going to also declare an object of the type UI text view. And we're going to call the UI text view and connect it to a label to the view and make the following changes to ViewController.h. So what we're going to do is going to have a different navigation controller. So I'm not exactly sure, however, if so I modified that code to take out the underscore next to ViewController because that was the old code style. Whether or not this one's actually going to load is an interesting question. In fact, I'm going to try it now. No, it's not going to load. So I'm going to take this out actually. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? I believe, let's just take a look here. I don't believe I'm going to need that anymore. Instead, I'm just going to add the UI text view. So let's just leave that out completely. I have a strange feeling that I don't need that anymore. So I'm going to open up the view controller. I'm going to add a UI text view because the concept here is we're going to put a text view on there, but I'm going to use the same controller. I'm not going to add a different controller for it. So let's just see if this happens. This is sort of an experiment at this point. So go into the UI text view controller and add a text view component. And the text view component is going to be using a text view component. So we're going to read and write to the text view, which should work. Let's see. So we're going to add a text view component to the screen, and then we can wire the text view component as well. So there's a couple of different ways of doing it. Let's just take a look here. If we actually look at the screen, the storyboard, and oops, let me open up the side piece here. We have this thing called a text view. In the old days, you actually had to add this manually, which is what this part of this tutorial was doing. So instead of doing it, I'm going to switch gears with it. I've decided I'm going to bypass the tutorial and just show you the text view. So now we actually have the text view. We drag the text view over. We have an app that works with a text view. So if we open it up and we just run the app the way that it's running right now, we see that we should have a view that shows up. And in the view, we should be able to type in the view, which is what we get with a text view. So the way that this tutorial was originally written, you had to actually add the controller to app delegate, and you had to actually create the text view component by creating that object, add the object to the UI, and then add the text to the text view. You don't have to do that anymore. So I have to take this tutorial out or rewrite this tutorial essentially. But the text view component looks like this. Why do people do this? Well, they take and they load text files into it. Or you use it in terms of multiple lines of text that you're going to put in your GUI instead of just one line. So it's not a text box, it's a text view. But the interesting component is that it runs on it as a separate view component. So it shows up in our text view. So if I make this a little bit smaller, I'm just going to bypass this tutorial a little bit. And if I make it a little bit smaller, what I can also do is load in another view down here. So if I type in just the word view, and I come down to the bottom here, I have a collection view, I have a table view, I have an image view, so I can take the image view and stick it there. This is the text view. And so the way that the views are working now is you just drag and drop them and put them in. You don't have to actually have a separate controller for them. You can still do a separate controller, but the way that this tutorial is written, it's not going to work. Not going to work the way it is. All right. So on the view controller, if you take a look here on the setup text, you can set the self text view to a UI text view. You can actually set the text in the text view, the font in the text view, wire the text view property to the view, which is another way of doing it. Or on the setup text view method, let's actually let me see if I'm going to be able to get the setup text view method to work. So let's see. Get rid of the side component here. Let me see. Oh, it's sticking on the bottom actually. What I'm trying to do is prevent having to type. Let's see, text view. I simply wire the text view, and if I wired it backwards, let's see. No. All right, this tutorial is not going to work because of the new different Xcode changed on me, and the view controllers are done differently. So I'm going to abandon this tutorial completely and take it out. So I was going to try and make it work, but it's not going to work the way I've got it set. So. But long story short, there's a learning objective to this, and what I wanted to show you by this tutorial was the different views. So what we'd have to do here is just, instead of taking the UI text view as an object, reading and writing to the UI text field, we would have to drag this over like a component. So we could just do this to it, actually. I keep saying I'm going to abandon it, and then I keep going. If I wire it to the view controller, let's just wire it, because now I'm kind of curious. And if I control drag it over here and call it a text view and get rid of this piece up here, so I've got it wired in instead of using an external component, then I should be able to write to the UI text field. And let's just take a look here actually. Get rid of this formatting issues. Let's see. I have a little, when I cut and paste and I stuck that in there, I have a little things here. So let's take a look at here. Assigning retain object this week. Yeah, it's using the old. So I can read and write. This is using a very old garbage collection technique. And it actually didn't work, which is kind of interesting. Probably because I didn't call the method. If on the view did load, I called the setup text view. What I did is I copied and pasted this in a previous step without following the tutorial actually. And what this is doing is it's setting the text. So let me just copy this out here, and I'll show you something. When this object loads, I can go ahead and just set the text view on the view did load. So if I go back up here to the view did load, let's see. The view did load. Let's take a look here. Set the text here. So this is the sample text. So when the view did load, it would load up the sample text. What this tutorial actually doesn't open and read files, but you could do it that way. So what normally people do is like create. Well, you can create a simple notepad actually this way by opening up a file, loading it up into a text view, and then putting controls down there to save the file or to, abandon changes or something like that. Anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and abandon this because it's not going to work with the old project style. So, but I just wanted to show you the different views. So, I'm not even going to ask for questions on this one because the tutorial's too old to work with the current Xcode. So it's not going to perform properly for us. So let me go ahead and stop this one, and I'll start a brand new one up next. So let me stop this tutorial.